Hey, welcome back. It's Yvonne Wakefield, Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel and podcast. Zachary's here wearing his Hello Kitty scarf. He'll be hanging out for a while. So I want to recap last chapter, which was Yellow Rose. I had returned from a trip to Minnesota to get some furniture and things. I started chinking the log cabin. Chinking is when you fill the spaces between the logs with mortar, which is a combination of cement. And I want to just show you, Artur is going to throw these up soon, but this is actually how the cabin was looking at this time. I had then finished the outside, but the chapter I'm reading right now, I have not finished the inside or the outside yet. Fall is coming. It gets dark like at 4:30 in the afternoon. I'm still living in a pup tent. The prior chapter I talked about insulating the spaces in between the walls. So in between each layer of this chinking, if these are the walls like this, there's pink fiberglass insulation and then the chinking's over it. So think about it like as an industrial some more. So chapter 26, mortar. Journal entry, September 24th. Alas, this chinking is a pain in the ass. I shovel out sand from the truck bed onto a sheet of black visqueen beside the pile. Sacks of cement and lime are stacked on the same level spot below the building site. This is where I begin, hoe in hand, courting a lackluster relationship with mortar. Hunt's book is on the ground. Open to page 42, quote, "It should be mixed so that it can be worked into cracks and small openings and fill large openings without sagging." Hunt says mortar, which he calls plaster, should be applied with a trowel and smoothed out into the form of a fillet with the hands. Fillet, I know how to fillet, but it involves a sharp knife and a sunfish, crappie, bass, or northern pike. How am I supposed to fillet invertebrate mush with my fingers? Hunt does not elaborate, but he recommends leather gloves are helpful. By trial and error, I learned to mix the proper consistency to the dry ingredients. I add water slowly, working the mortar from the front of the wheelbarrow to the back until it is as thick as really, really stout chocolate malt. My plan is to chink the inside of the cabin first from the loft down. Once the mortar has cured, I can move my belongings inside and chink the outside at leisure. I push the full wheelbarrow into the shade of the cabin and fill a bucket. Trowel in back pocket. I haul the bucket up one lodgepole pine and tamarack ladder at a time, walk across the floor, and scale a similar ladder up into the loft. I pile mortar onto a hock. For those of you who don't know what a hock is, it's, sorry for stopping there, it's like this thing you hold in your hand, and you put the mortar on it, and then you trowel the mortar. And I do mention in one chapter where tools don't fit for me, so I actually had to build my own hock with a tamarack stick and a piece of plywood. So from the hock, I scrape mortar into the cracks and smooth it with a trowel. If it is too dry, it falls out. Too wet, it seeps and splats on the floor. If I come across a protruding nail, I have to stop and hammer. All the chinking I've just applied falls out. In the beginning, I have more mortar on the floor than on the walls. All day long, the only time I'm outside is while I'm mixing mortar in the wheelbarrow. During this regular hoedown, I keep glancing down the road. At this point, I would welcome even an unwelcome visitor, anything to jolt the monotony of mixing and trawling mortar. By 5 p.m., the draw is in full shadow. I wash the tools and the wheelbarrow and buckets of water drawn from the creek hauled up to the site. I cover the cement and lime sacks with visqueen and futz about my camp until sunset. Inside the tent, I reapply Noxzema to my hands and face and read for hours, occasionally glancing at the open corner flap programmed for a cat, until I give up into sleep. Remember the chapter before, my cat had run away. In the morning, I read a little longer than usual so I can recall and read throughout the rest of the day as I mix and trowel. I read about 22 forms of alternative energy and define each out loud as I ply, but do not fillet mortar. Fusion is, I read about ancient Roman arches and wonder why my mortar avoids the principal rule of a keystone. I read an anthology of feminist writers. The one author who I'm unfamiliar with uses a word that is also new to me, so I take the time to copy the passage into my journal. Quote, "If we are to arrive at any blitheness in facing life, we must have faith to believe that it is exercising this gift in giving it out to its fullest, that the archives of herself that she justifies her existence." Ruth Benedict, 1887 to 1948. Blitheness. I like the word. I wonder what it means. I douse my morning fire. I'd read No Cowards, Blithe Spirit, but the word with ness at the end gives me pause to think about blithe in any spelling. Blitheness, I think, must mean lighthearted or lightheaded. Is it a verb or a noun? I wonder as I steer wet coals heading up for the building site. The only dictionary I have is under a tarp in the judge's meadow, packed in a box, one of many unloaded from the U-Haul. Left to conjure my own definition, I take blitheness at its word, treat it like a mischievous new friend, and play with it as I trowel along. Blithe, adjective, kind-hearted. Blitheness, noun, the act of wind or state of blowing. She teetered on the ladder, the forest, a blitheness of branch and breeze, blithefully, adjective. Adverb, to float gaily. She fell to the ground, blithefully, innocent of the gravity of gravity. Blitheful, adjective. Made in good faith. She landed with a blitheful, bone-breaking quake. I bore easily and returned to alternative forms of energy. Solar, geothermal, anaerobic, blitheness in any form is long forgotten by the time I get to hydro, solar, wind. Words with more predictable meanings. By afternoon, I'm tired of playing with words and recite the multiplication tables, simple math problems with definite answers, relying on my fingers to calculate the 9 times. 7 times 8 is 56. 8 times 8 is 64. Another trowelful of mortar. This one stays in the entire row as I continue. 8 times 9 is, I set down the palette, count a few chalky gray fingers, 72. The next morning, I'm rekindling a spark with blitheness, having mastered the 9 times and memorized all the alternative energy forms and their definitions. I hear a mortar. As I peek from the crack, I'm slathering clothes and see my brother walking up to the site. I hadn't known his whereabouts since I left Minnesota a month before. I put the hawk upside down over the mortar-filled bucket and greet my brother, who stands below the tamarack porch ladder. "Hi, I'm back. I got a job cooking for an elk camp." Mark lifts the sweat-stained cowboy hat from his premature receding hairline and spits. I don't ask him where he's been in the past month, but I know it hasn't been in cultured company over cocktails at the top of the mark. He's burnished an accent and assumed an attitude that would make even the surliest Keebler elf slink. "Since when did you become a cook?" I asked, looking down on him from the porch. "Since I wanted to," he licks his lips. "Want some?" He pulls out a round tin from his pocket, the circumference worn into the denim. "No thanks," I say from experience. "Wait, want a joint then?" He unsnaps the pocket of his jean jacket and pulls out a cigar tube stuffed with joints. He hawks a gob, puts the juice, kind of slaps down his chin, and he wipes it with his sleeves. I climb down the ladder. Mark watches as I mix a fresh batch of mortar. He chews and spits and fills me in on his plans. He will stay in Anne's cabin when he is not out cooking in elk camp. The first time my brother cooked anything, he was 10 years old. On Good Friday, he decided to fry a hamburger after my mother had gone out of the house. Meat on Friday? During Lent? Some god sent down a stern warning and Mark to the hospital with second-degree burns on his arm and neck. The next time I was party to my brother's culinary skills, a porcupine was involved. Somehow I convinced some hunters he could live up to the family name of Pepin. "Want to stick around a while and help me chink? I've got an extra trowel." I filled another bucket with mortar and give him a hopeful look. "No thanks. I get to open up Anne's cabin. The pack rats have already likely taken over." Mark puts his hat back on and another pinch between his cheek. "I'll be staying there while I'm not cooking." He repeats in an accent as unpolished as the company he will keep. He looks up and down at the cabin and stares at the green canvas tarp and says, "Where's your goddamn cat?" I'm inside the cabin, chipping off dried mortar when I hear Jim's truck engine shut off at 8 sharp, exactly 10 days after I mailed him a note saying I would be ready for help. From the porch, I watch him take some time bending into his cab. Usually he just hoists his toolbox from the bed, carries it to the site, and is ready to work. Something is slowing him down this morning, and it's not tools he sets on the ground. "Tamarack! Tamarack, rack! I scale the pole ladder, and Tamarack, looking no worse for where he's been, approaches as we haven't spent nearly a month apart. I saw him poking up from a culvert down the road near the Nelsons. You know about where Pine Creek Road ends? I stop, and I said, "Tamarack, and that damn cat just came to me," Jim said. Tamarack patters over to the green tarp and then curls next to a 16-ounce peanut butter jar. I run down to my camp, return with a bag of kibble, pour some into the tarp, and he eats it all. I pour more. By gravel road and highway, Jim's well over 20 miles from me, as the crow flies, an immeasurable course of over twice that distance between peaks and draws. Since cats don't fly, Jim and I later calculated Tamarack climbed up over ridges, drainages, and mountainsides between Laycock, Canyon, Dog, and smaller ravines. He surmounted inclinations and predatory obstacles on 4 cat feet and still had 4 more road miles to walk to my campsite when Jim found him at the culvert. I take off one of my 3 layers of flannel shirts and lay it on the tarp. When Tamarack is through eating, he does his cat twirl on warm flannel and falls into a patterned sleep. Before Jim leaves for the day, he shows me how to block and level the 24-foot extension ladder outside with boards. The red tips go up, and these, he points to the aluminum feet perpendicular to the ladder, need to always be flat on the ground. The next morning, I start chinking the outside back wall of the cabin, 20 feet high, and aside from the porch, the most level place to pitch the ladder. Troweling from left to right, I feel the side rails shift slightly. Instinctively, I move in the opposite direction to regain equilibrium. Still, the ladder scrapes the log sideways and clanks fast away, accompanying my fleeting adjustment with a clanging crash. Bucket, trowel, hawk, and ladder fall to the ground. I stay plastered to the wall, gripping a hold between the gaps. Slowly and surely, I nestle footholds into the logs below and lower my body down, one log at a time. Once on steady ground, I am shaken by the truth. It's really easy to kill myself out here. Yvonne, too many things can go wrong too fast, and it will be too late before anyone can get to you. Dell is loading planed 1-bys into the tank's bed. I've just told him about the falling ladder and my plans to winter it here. It's about supper time. Why don't you come down and eat with us? Dell hammers a rusty nail through a red rag into a board with a rock he has picked up from the old, oily, sawdusty dirt outside the planing shed. I clinch a rope around the load and fasten it tight to the anchors I've recently had welded to the gunwales. Supper at Dell's is what I call lunch because it is served at noon. It is usually a bowl of beef stew, white bread, and butter, and instant tea mixed in amber plastic tumblers. Dessert is more of the same. I accept the luncheon invitation and try not to think back on Little Buck as I sit with a couple grateful enough just for having meat to offer to a picky stranger. But carrying is served along with thick beef stew, and I'm hungry enough to stay for dessert. Want some more, Yvonne? Annabelle takes my bowl for the third time to the pot on the stove. Oh, no, thank you. I pat my belly. I'm full. Dale pushes back his chair, then goes to the bathroom, signaling it's time for Annabelle to clear the table. I help her place dishes in the sink. There are leftovers to scrape away. Annabelle plucks a cigarette from a pack on the counter. As she smokes, I tell her about my plans to winter alone in the cabin. Honey, give it up now and go back to Minnesota, where it is warm. She exhales deeply, and I dodge her drift. All right, so that is about the beginning of the winter, partial winter I'm about to experience at the log cabin. So we will see you next week for chapter 27. We hope you subscribe, tell your friends about it. This is just a really kind of cozy way that you can listen to a book and see some of my gestures and my little dogs who are always here and happy. And as always, stay hydrated. You too are too. Remember, stay hydrated. Bye-bye.